The story of creation, as told in the book of Genesis, has shaped religious and cultural thought for thousands of years. It introduces us to the God of Israel, the creation of the world, Adam and Eve, and the origins of humanity. But what if there was another version, one that completely reinterprets these foundational stories? Enter the Gnostics, a mystical group from the early centuries of Christianity whose worldview flipped the Genesis narrative on its head. They saw the God of Genesis not as the ultimate creator, but as a flawed and tyrannical being. To them, Eve was the liberator, the serpent was the hero, and the so-called fall was humanity's first step toward true enlightenment. Today, we're diving deep into the Gnostic version of Genesis. We'll explore the creation of the world, the role of the demiurge, the true meaning of the Garden of Eden, the flood, and the mysterious story of Seth and his descendants. Along the way, we'll highlight how these ideas differ from the traditional Genesis narrative and uncover the profound spiritual lessons hidden within Gnostic texts. At the heart of the Gnostic worldview is the concept of the pleroma. The pleroma, often translated as fullness, represents the realm of the supreme God. Unlike the God of Genesis who actively creates the heavens and the earth, the supreme God of Gnosticism is beyond human comprehension. This divine source is not a being in the conventional sense, but the ultimate reality, the ineffable origin of all existence. The supreme God emanates aspects of itself called eons. These eons are divine attributes like wisdom, love, and truth that exist within the pleroma. Together, they form a harmonious and eternal reality completely separate from the material world we know. This is the first major difference between the traditional Genesis story and the Gnostic version. In Genesis, God is an active, personal creator who speaks the universe into existence. In Gnosticism, the supreme God remains untouched by the act of creation, existing as the ultimate spiritual reality far beyond the flawed material world. One of the most important eons in this narrative is Sophia, whose name means wisdom. Sophia plays a crucial role in the Gnostic story of creation, but not in the way you might expect. I made a whole video about the story of Sophia, so if you'd like to watch that in detail, click the link in the top right. In this video, I'll just be covering a more abbreviated version. So the Gnostic story of creation takes a dramatic turn with Sophia's fateful act. Unlike the harmonious eons of the pleroma, Sophia acts independently, outside the divine order. Motivated by curiosity and a desire to create, she generates a being without the consent of the supreme God or the other eons. This being is Yaldabaoth, later known as the demiurge. The name Yaldabaoth means child of chaos, and it's fitting. The demiurge is ignorant of the pleroma and blind to the supreme God, yet in his arrogance he believes himself to be the ultimate creator. I am God and there is no other God beside me. This declaration reveals the demiurge's ignorance and hubris. Unlike the benevolent God of Genesis, the demiurge is a flawed and tyrannical being. His creation is not an act of divine love, but a result of his own ignorance and desire for control. Sophia, realizing her mistake, is filled with remorse. She casts the demiurge out of the pleroma, separating him from the divine realm. The demiurge, unaware of his origins, goes on to create the material world, a realm of imperfection and suffering. In the Genesis account, God creates the world in 6 days and declares it good. But the Gnostics saw the material world as a prison, a place designed to trap humanity and keep them ignorant of their divine origins. For them, the beauty of the natural world was overshadowed by its inherent flaws, a reflection of its flawed creator. Humanity's creation is another key difference between the Gnostic and Genesis narratives. According to Genesis, God creates Adam from the dust of the earth and breathes life into him. Adam is made in the image of God and given dominion over the animals. Later, Eve is created from Adam's rib to be his companion. In the Gnostic version, however, humanity's creation is far more complex. The Demiurge and his archons, subordinate entities who assist him, attempt to create a human being. They form Adam's body but fail to give it life. The result is a lifeless, incomplete figure. Sophia, out of compassion, intervenes. She sends a spark of divine light from the pleroma into Adam, imbuing him with life and awareness. They blew into his face, and the man became a living being, but he became stronger than those who had created him and wiser than they were. This moment is pivotal. Adam, now containing a spark of the divine, becomes a being far greater than the Demiurge intended. He is no longer a mere servant, but a potential liberator, carrying with him the capacity for gnosis, the knowledge of his true origins. In Genesis, humanity is created to serve and obey God. In the Gnostic story, humanity is created to transcend the material world and return to the pleroma. This divine spark is the key to liberation, but it also makes humanity a target of the Demiurge's jealousy and control. The story of the Garden of Eden is one of the most famous in Genesis. God places Adam and Eve in a paradise, commanding them to not eat from the tree of knowledge. When Eve is tempted by the serpent, she disobeys and shares the fruit with Adam, resulting in their expulsion from the garden. The Gnostic version, however, flips this narrative entirely. In the Apocryphon of John and other texts, Eve is not a sinner but a liberator. I am the thought of the undefiled spirit. Arise and remember, for I am your root. She represents Sophia's wisdom and serves as Adam's guide to awakening. The serpent, too, takes on a new role. In the Gnostic account, the serpent is an agent of Sophia, sent to reveal the truth to Adam and Eve. The serpent was wiser than all the animals that were in paradise. By eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge, they gain gnosis, an awareness of their divine spark and the true nature of their creator. In Genesis, the fall is a tragedy, marking humanity's descent into sin and separation from God. But for the Gnostics, it is a victory, a necessary step toward liberation. Adam and Eve's disobedience is not a failure but an act of defiance against the Demiurge's tyranny. The Gnostic interpretation of the flood is just as subversive. In Genesis, the flood is a punishment for humanity's wickedness, a divine reset intended to cleanse the earth. But in the Gnostic texts, like the hypostasis of the archons, the flood is an act of malice by the Demiurge, who seeks to destroy humanity's growing wisdom. Noah's wife, Norea, plays a crucial role in this narrative. Unlike Noah, who complies with the Demiurge's commands, Norea resists. She is the daughter of Eve and a guardian of Gnosis, determined to protect the divine spark within humanity. When the Demiurge's forces threaten her, Norea calls out to the true God for help. Then the great angel Elelith appeared, and he said to her, "Fear not, for I shall protect you." Neria's defiance highlights the ongoing struggle between the forces of ignorance and the pursuit of enlightenment. While the flood may devastate the material world, the divine spark within humanity endures. The story of Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve, takes on special significance in Gnostic thought. Gnostic texts like the hypostasis of the archons suggest that Cain and Abel were created under the influence of the archons, the malevolent rulers of the material world. And they created offspring in their image, but their creations were lifeless, devoid of spirit. This influence made them flawed, tied to the material world and ignorant of the divine spark. The murder of Abel by Cain is seen as a symbolic act, representing the triumph of material ignorance over spiritual truth. In Genesis, Seth is a replacement for Abel, born after Cain kills his brother. But in the Gnostic texts, Seth and his descendants represent a lineage of enlightened beings, the race of Seth, who preserved divine knowledge across generations. They resembled the great eternal angels, for they were higher than the God who created them. Seth's birth marks a break from this corruption. Seth is described as a pure being, created through divine intervention by Sophia and the Supreme God. Unlike his brothers, Seth embodies the spiritual light of the Pleroma, untainted by the Demiurge's influence. His descendants, the race of Seth, are charged with carrying forth divine knowledge, standing as beacons of gnosis in a world dominated by ignorance and materiality. The Gnostics identified themselves with the race of Seth, seeing their spiritual quest as a part of a cosmic struggle to reclaim the lost light of the Pleroma. Ultimately, the Gnostic version of Genesis is a story of two gods. The false god, the Demiurge, rules over the material world with ignorance and jealousy. The true God, the Supreme Being, calls humanity to awaken and return to the fullness of the Pleroma. This dualistic vision challenges the traditional monotheistic framework of Genesis, offering a radically different understanding of creation, humanity, and the divine. The Gnostic retelling of Genesis invites us to question the nature of reality, the forces that govern it, and our own divine origins. It transforms the story of creation, the fall, and the flood into profound allegories of spiritual awakening and resistance. Thank you again for joining me on this journey into the mysteries of the Gnostic version of Genesis. Let me know what you think about the Gnostic version of Genesis in the comments below. Did you like this story? Did you find it insightful? What resonated with you? And of course, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.